Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure of the property Deputy Speaker. So it's been a while since I've been up doing a reply to the speech from the throne, so I'm going to take a little bit here to thank a few people, and I'd like to start off my speech with just passing on my condolences to the former Speaker's family, the Honourable Thomas Malloy, who passed away last year, and I want to pass on my congratulations to the new Speaker, the new Lieutenant Governor, Russ Marasty, His Honour, and I want to wish him well in representing the Queen for our province. Now, this is the part where occasionally I get emotional, but this year I'm going to try and tone it down. But I'm going to start off with thanking my family. So everybody gets up here when we do this throne speech, and the most important people that we do this for is our family. So I want to reach out and I want to thank my boys. Some of them have moved on, but the one with the 3 kids, Dylan, he's probably not watching tonight, and I know the kids will be in bed, but you know, I've got 3 wonderful grandchildren that Dylan's helped expand the population of our province. So I want to say hi to Jordison, Jackson, and Attica. It's you guys, and you make this job worthwhile doing. We, on this side of the House, actually have a positive outlook for the future of our province, not the doom and gloom and the sky is always gray that we hear from the other side of the province, or the sky is following like Chicken Little. Yes, there are some issues we have to work on to make this the best place in Canada and the world, which I actually think it is, but to make it even better for our children, all our grandchildren. I know even the folks on the other side of the House actually got into this for the right reasons. They may have lost sight of that since they've been in opposition for so long now, but we all get into it for the right reasons, and it's usually to make this a better place for our family, our friends, and those that we work for. Next, I want to just say hi to Dylan and Macy. Jeff, you guys have all helped me hugely getting where I am. I want to reach out to Mom and Dad. I don't know if you guys are watching tonight. You probably don't know that I'm up, but you might see this on social media later on. So I want to thank you guys for your guidance over the years, and when we come and we're working at 9 o'clock at night and we start at 7 or 8 in the morning, it's like the days, good old days in the oil field where you start at sunrise in the summer and you work till sunset in the 10 o'clock at night just moving rigs. So the federal government hasn't totally destroyed the oil field. They're still drilling a few holes down there, but they're making it a lot harder for my family and friends down in Estevan to, I'm not going to forget my wife. You saved the best till last there, Cannington. I want to just throw that out to Mom and Dad that, you know, 10, 12 hours here is a good day working for the people of the province. And it's not as hard on the body as, say, working in the oil field was, but it's a good day. We get to make a difference for the people here in Saskatchewan, same as those people working in the oil fields in our mines down in Estevan, our potash mines around Moose Jaw, making this a better place, making this a good place to raise a family. Okay, so I've got the kids, I've got Mom and Dad, got my brothers and sisters still down in Estevan. Thank you. I want to reach out to all my constituents in Moose Jaw, Waccamaw. You've placed your trust in me now for 2 elections. My board and the supporters that I have back home have nominated me to run a third time, so I will be running in the election next year, and I'm looking forward to that again. It was a really good summer out there knocking on doors and talking to the folks in Moose Jaw. I was really surprised at the support I have out there. Even those that have said that they really don't support the party I represent have said I've done a darn good job for Moose Jaw Waccamaw. So I really appreciate that when it's coming from people of a different political stripe. And the supporters, well, I'm looking forward to working for them for a third term. And as I was reminded, but wasn't even close to forgetting, well, I'm going to actually add a couple more in there. I actually have 2 CAs now. I've got Trina and Sherry. They do a wonderful job holding down the fort back in Moose Jaw. Sherry moved back. Her spouse is in the Canadian Air Force, and they moved back from Ontario, Bellevue, I think, Ontario, about a year ago, and she's helping us out when Trina takes holidays, so filling in those spots where we need her help, and I just want to thank her for that. They do great work there. I want to save the best for last, and like most of us, that's our spouse, our bride, our partner, whichever you want to call them. My wife, Marjorie. We've been through the thick and thin of it. She's the one that got me interested in politics a long time ago. We always voted. That was one great thing about the cadet program, is they taught you your civic responsibility, a civic duty. You actually have to take control of your own future, and part of that is doing your civic duty by voting. So my wife encouraged me to get involved in actually a political party when we lived back in Estevan, and that was very interesting, learning how to do politics that way. And then when we moved to Moose Jaw and I had left the oil field and I had more spare time, I became involved in union politics and then Métis politics in Moose Jaw. And some people say this is rough, but those were some pretty rough meetings as well back in the day doing that. And all those folks that do that, I give them kudos. So without my wife's support and without my wife's guidance and without my wife going, Greg, you need to do this, I wouldn't be here. So, you know, it's tough to put it in words other than thank you very much, Marge, hun. Love you. Thank you for your support over the years, and thank you for encouraging me to keep doing this. So, moving on, we'll get into the throne speech. Oh, I forgot to add, I need to thank my board for supporting me and all the good work they do back in Moose Jaw. You guys put in a lot of time, a lot of volunteer time for me, and I really appreciate that. So, Myrna and Sherry and Ryan and well, I know I'm missing a few. Now you guys, next meeting I'll apologize to everybody. It'll be my turn to buy coffee and donuts. So for those of you that I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. So on to the throne speech. Again, our other members have stated it. I'm not sure what the opposition was listening to when they read the throne speech, but you know, over the last 12 years, we've enjoyed a remarkable, and I'm going to quote directly, we've enjoyed a remarkable period of strong and sustained growth. Growth our province has not seen since 1920s. Now, I know some of our members are getting up there in years, and some members over there are up there in years as well, but nobody around here, even our illustrious member from Cannington, who's been here for a long, long time, doesn't remember the 1920s. But when you have a sustained period of growth like that, there's usually a reason for it. And the reason isn't government. The reason is the economy. So when you have a prolonged period of sustained growth, it means your government is there to support business growth. If you don't have that growth on the business side of things, you don't have jobs for these people. They wouldn't be coming here to work. So when you have the second highest job growth creation in the country, and you have one of the highest growth of population rate in the country, there's a reason for it. Government has got out of the way. And that's something that's important and integral to what we do as government. We need to be there to support our businesses. We don't have to tell them how to do it. That's what they do. Our job is to make sure they can do the job they need to do. And one of those things that leads into is getting our product to market. We are an exporting province. You know, we feed, you know, they used to call the area around Moose Jaw down to Milestone and a little bit farther the breadbasket of the world. They called us that since World War II. And they fed the world out of that area with grain. Now that was when 40 bushels an acre was an average crop. 40 bushels an acre now, people would be shaking their head at. With the sustained growth we've seen in farming, and then, okay, so I'm gonna veer back here because we're gonna talk about farming a little bit, and then the member from, where was that? Regina Northeast today said, we're claiming farming here in the province is a net sequester of carbon or a net zero. I'm not a farmer. I don't come from farming background. I grew up in the oil field. My grandparents worked in the coal mines. I come from that background. Grandpa had a little farm. But I remember the 80s quite well because I was in the oil field, and before that I would help Grandpa hay in the summer. And back then, the farming practices, when you're moving their eggs in the summer, every farmer was out there. They were tilling the field. They were summer following to knock down the weeds. That I don't know if there was zero till back then, but now they're doing zero till. I'm not a farmer. I understand the concept behind it. I understand that the sequestration of carbon is part of that process. I don't know how it all works. I'm not a scientist, or as they like to quote, a lawyer, or I'm a doctor. I'm just a guy who worked. I've worked, you know, pretty much every day of my life. I'm not one of those guys that went to university for years and years and years.
You worked, come on.
Oh, yes, I worked. I was in the oil field for a long time. I wasn't quite a butcher like you, but I worked for a long time in the oil field and the lineman for power. So, but back to the 80s, when it was a drought in the 80s, like we've had over the last few years at different times, the dust would blow. I used to wear snow goggles running a pick or a crane truck loading pipe because the dust would blow so bad you couldn't see. So I remember seeing the dust fill the ditches with topsoil. You don't see that now because farmers have changed their practice. We have some of the best farmers, if not the best farmers in the world, right here in our province. We have some of the best companies that produce that farming equipment right here in our province. Now, when one of the members, the opposition members, goes, well, the farmers they're contributing to carbon. They're making it worse. I'm going, no, they don't. They're actually doing a much better job. They are better stewards of the land than pretty much anybody else out there. And I'm not going to tell a farmer how to do his job. There are other people out there, maybe from the other side, that in all their extensive knowledge and whatever job they had before, they know how to be a better farmer than a farmer, but I don't. So I just, it's one of those things you got to sit back and you got to shake your head at. And you wonder where they get their information from. So back to getting our exports to, that would be our member from Regina Northeast, your member from Regina Northeast. So when we got to get back to the strong export growth, and what we need to do is we need to get our oil and our other products to market. So to get that to market, we actually need to work with the federal government to get our product to market. We need to get those pipelines built, both to the west and hopefully at some point to the east. The fact that our oil goes south to the United States and they actually refine it and then ship it back up to Quebec and Ontario, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to me that we sell it to them at the West Texas intermediate price and then they sell it back to our country at the world price. That doesn't seem to equate that we take our tax dollars from here and through equalization we send them east so they can ship it south. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I would like to see our product get there. And then we can actually support their social programs, our education programs, a lot better if we can get our products to market, to the world market, where it really needs to get. I'm going to touch on the federal election just a little bit. Because it does matter. There's members over there that call us the Conservatives all the time. And I'm only going to talk about the vote in this province because when you take a look at the amount of votes that the Conservatives got, which was 366,611, and then you take a look at the New Democratic Party vote, 111,379. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, but that's about a 3-to-1 vote. I'm pretty good at math, though. That's 3-to-1. So if you take a look at the representation on that side of the House, there's 13 over there, and there's 49 here. So that's a lot, 48. So that's a lot better than 3-to-1. So you have the party that wants to implement a carbon tax and saying, yes, it's good for our province, yet 2/3 of the voters said no to a carbon tax. And they're still saying it's a good thing. They haven't walked that back at all. Not once. That sure quiets them down when you point out to them that 2/3 of the province don't like what they're saying. Not everybody likes what we're saying because 1/3 of the province actually voted for a carbon tax. So, you know what? The voters, I've heard members say it before. I heard the former Liberal here, Minister Ralph Goodale, thank him for all his years of work. But even he said, the voters are never wrong. And he lost. So when 2/3 of the province is going, hey guys, sit up and pay attention, maybe you should sit up and pay attention. So part of that is, and it's huge and it's simple. We need to get our product to market. The more of our product we get to market, the more schools we can have, the more teachers we can have, the more doctors, the more nurses, the more people we have working, the better it is for the province of Saskatchewan. So one of our other members talked about it today, and they talked about the 176 schools closed under the NDP. And then I heard the number today, and I hadn't associated the 400 teachers that disappeared when they closed that 176 schools. So I'm not sure if they fired them, laid them off, or just moved them out of the thing. But they got rid of 400 plus teachers. So what did we do? We got a bunch of teachers. But I'm going to touch on the schools around Moose Jaw that they closed. We got Wilcox Public School. In Wilcox, we had the Cole Ross School in Moose Jaw. We had the Briarcrest School in Briarcrest. We had Crane Valley School in Crane Valley. There's a few more. Oh, and a few schools I actually went to in Estevan. Scottsburn closed. I went to that. My dad went to that. Estevan Junior High, I went to that. I had some uncles go to that. Hillside Elementary. My kids went to that one. All in Estevan. We had the Alexander School in Moose Jaw closed. The King Edward School in Moose Jaw closed. I could read them all. That would take the 20 minutes to get these all into the record. And so, you know, we're building schools. We're not closing them. So that means we've got more work to do. We've announced a school this year in the budget in Moose Jaw, and from what I understand, they're in the talks with the city right now to get the right place to build it on South Hill. Hopefully my grandkids are still on South Hill and we'll be going to the new school in a couple of years. So we're going to get that built and we're going to consolidate 4 schools. And I went to those meetings this summer and the people were they're like, yeah, let's get it done. What can we do? What more can we do? What can we tell the government we got to do to get this built and get it in and work with the city and get the new school? They actually said, and I heard it, we deserve a new school in Moose Jaw. So we're going to do our best to get that built and get shovels in the ground as soon as we can get all the land worked out and where we're going to go, and we're going to get that built. And my grandkids are going to have a new school to go to. Yeah, I just had to get a drink of water. It's a little dry there. On a thing. So as opposed to closing 176 schools, laying off or firing 400 teachers, we're building schools. We're putting more money. Since we've been in power, school operating funding. So that's what funds the teachers and TAs and our school principals and our just the folks that work at our schools. It's up by 34%. I actually had somebody challenge me on that today, and I'm like, okay, so what's the right number? They had no idea. It was just like they were reading the NDP notebook. They're like, we need to spend more. And how much more? More, just more. Is that 1%, 2%, 5%? Just more. Well, that just spending more with no direction isn't going to help anything. Yes, and I know they hate hearing, but yes, there's more work to be done. Our capital spending compared to the NDP on education is up 396%. 396%. So, again, 396%, yeah. So that's what happens when you build schools and when people are moving here instead of moving them away. Our motto is from many people's strength. And if you get more people coming to the province, then that strength grows, as opposed to the old NDP model, which was leave it in the ground and last one out of the province, shut off the lights. We're looking at the longest sustained growth period in our province since the 1920s. In spite of all the years the NDP were in power, and yeah, it might have turned the corner before we took over, but we sustained it. We got out of the way and let the people do what they do best. Then there's the 52 hospitals. And, you know, yes, they made a good point. It's how many of those have you reopened up? Well, first of all, we had to fix all the ones they let deteriorate or close long-term care beds. We had to get those fixed up. So we fixed those up, we've built new hospitals, we've got more to go, but they know how hard it is to recruit nurses and doctors, and we've got 3,000 plus more nurses, rather than laying off or firing, or I'm not sure what they did with the nurses, 450 nurses and 173 doctors. So we talk about wait times now, we talk about crowded ER rooms. Had they maybe not fired 173 doctors and 450 nurses and closed 52 hospitals, including the Plains, where I actually had to ride an ambulance from Estevan to Regina back when I was a kid, had an accident and ended up being rushed up here in an ambulance. And they closed that down because it was for rural Saskatchewan. It shows you what their thoughts are, because the majority of those were rural hospitals. And if you take a look at this side of the House, we have a really strong rural representation on this side of the House. And yes, there are some folks on that side with rural roots, but they don't represent rural communities. So to say they're the voice of the farmer, and I'm sure there's a farmer or two out there that supports them, or they're the voice of rural Saskatchewan, the numbers don't play out. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty good at math, and they don't have any rural representation on that side of the House. So you can tell when you're getting under their skin because they start talking from their seat. So maybe I'm getting under their skin a little bit, pointing out. And the reason we have to point out what they did is so we don't make those same mistakes of the past. And we have to keep reminding Saskatchewan people what they actually did to our province when they were in power. Closing schools, laying off teachers, closing hospitals, firing doctors and nurses. Everybody needs to realize that was a huge problem. And yeah, it takes time to get that changed and turn the channel on that and move ahead. So we need to take a look at what's going on down at Estevan and the federal government's decision to accelerate the phase out of conventional coal-fired electricity by 2030. Now, I've got family and friends still down in Estevan. Some of them are still involved in the mining industry down there, and lots of friends that still work at the two power plants that are running down there. And instead of finding a way that we can sustain the life cycle of those power plants, they're like, nope, back to the old days, leave it in the ground, and last one's out, shut off the lights. Well, we're trying to build for the growth of the province. So there's some things we've done to do that. Yes, we've got some work to do working with the feds and seeing what we can do to sustain the life of those power plants, whether it's carbon sequestration or exactly what we're going to be able to do with the two power plants there and down in Cornack. But we're taking a look outside the box. We have we talked about the Deep Energy Deep Earth Energy Production Corporation. So they're actually drilling down in the southeast using drilling rigs to drill down into the hot water that runs underneath this province in a huge lake. And they're going to bring it up, and I believe the member from Moose Jaw North touched on it a little bit and talked about the energy that they're going to be able to produce out of that, the same as they did in Moose Jaw at the old Temple Gardens mineral spa. They actually tapped into another bed of it and used, from what I understand, part of what the tunnels of Moose Jaw did was run radiated heating and heated all the buildings of downtown Moose Jaw, but sometime in the past, they moved away from that. But we do have the Temple Gardens Mineral Spa right there with the hot water and a nice heated pool that you can go to year-round and be out there in the winter when it's cold and be in a nice warm pool looking up stars. So we've got deep down there, and a successful drilling of a preliminary well for their geothermal power facility. We talked about the wind power that they're building down at Assiniboia. That's another big project. And what we removed 500 tons of carbon emissions this year. So that's just working with some of these folks. SaskPower is one of our really good Crown corporations. I worked there for several years in the late 80s to the mid 90s, down in Boundary Dam, and yeah, it's an aging facility, but the folks down there have done a great job keeping it up and bringing in new technology that we can take to the world. When you have Canada producing 2% of the greenhouse gases, yes, we. 1.6. Yes, we need to do our part. But part of what our part is developing the technology that other countries and companies aren't. When you take a look at North Korea, South Korea and China, building numerous numbers of coal-fired power plants, and we have the technology, we can work with them, because we're not going to be able to tell them, no, you can't build your power plants, because you know what they'll do? They'll tell us, take your canola and stay home, kind of like they've done with some of the trade issues we're having with them. So let's work with them to clean up the atmosphere. Okay, the benefits of growth. So we've touched on that a little bit. We've got more hospitals, doctors, and nurses, shorter surgical wait times, more schools, teachers, and funding for education, lower personal income taxes, and Saskatchewan people keeping more of the money they earn. We have safer highways, and I know the member from Regina touched on that today. And being an old truck driver back in the day, and even though it was oil field, so I wasn't up around Regina a lot, you know, we'd go out to Mosaic and move the drilling rigs out there when they'd get an extra one. But making our highways safer. When we heard those stories this morning, we heard the story about that one lady's son, you know, it's pretty hard not to tear up. And, you know, they make light of the fact it went from 4 overpasses to a huge infrastructure project. And I just got to ask them, what's one life worth? What's one teenager worth? What's one grandkid? What's one family? Those interchanges, when you listen to the fire chief from White City speak today, and he had his handkerchief ready because he knows he tears up, he's an emotional guy, and you hear the stories, and he hasn't had to knock on a door. Yes, there have been accidents, but they haven't used the jaws of life, and I think it was 2 years they haven't used the jaws of life in an accident out there, and that's huge. You know, and now they're still complaining about it, and I'm like, you know what? My kids, my grandkids, they're not going to have to worry about that. Those families out there, they're not going to have to worry about that. Is there stuff they're going to have to worry about and be concerned with? You betcha there is, especially if those guys ever even come close to governing this province again, because we saw the abysmal rate that they put money into highways, which was sad. So yeah, it takes a while to get all that stuff fixed up. Am I getting close? Yeah? Okay. I don't want to go over my time, but there's so much stuff, and our member from Regina Pasqua today, he said it well. He doesn't understand why the NDP did not like anything in the throne speech. Yes, and I know they hate us saying this. There's more work to be done because you know the reason they're over there? Because they thought all the work was done. They thought we'd been all we can be. And now, we actually admit, yeah, there's more work to be done. We've talked about increasing our supports for surgical wait times because they're getting longer again. Happens with a growing province. You really never had to worry about a growing province, did you? You know, there's a reason, and you know what? I want to thank you for your many years of service. You worked for quite a while. So, you know, we have made a point of making the people of this province, all the people of this province, a priority, making it a better place, making it a safer place, making it so our grandkids, your grandkids, my grandkids, our children want to stay here, want to work. Yeah, it was part of that generation that, you know, the majority of the people, they either went to school in another province and stayed out there, or they graduated and had to go work. And it didn't matter if they were in the trades, and they were working pipelines in union trades, union jobs. They had to pack up and leave. You know why? They were in power. Their motto was leave it in the ground. Their motto was shut off the light, last one leaving. They managed for decline. They closed 176 schools. Why? Because people were leaving in droves. They closed rural hospitals, so there was no support in rural Saskatchewan. And yeah, that's not something you can fix overnight. You can shake your finger at us and go, well, you haven't reopened another one. Oh, that's because you fired all the doctors and nurses. So it's pretty tough when, you know, we're busy recruiting for an expanding province for them to point the finger at us and say, you haven't opened up anything, we close. Really? That's your answer? You know, we have an aging population. What do? They close long-term care beds. So you have an aging population, but you close long-term care beds. And then they complain about all the overcrowding and everything else. You can't snap your fingers or wave a magic wand and fix this. It takes time. And we're working on it. And we're getting there. And we're moving ahead. And you know what? For those, for 12 long years, so we're building hospitals, we're building schools. Better than closing hospitals, better than closing schools, better hiring nurses than firing nurses, better hiring doctors and recruiting doctors than firing doctors, better hiring more teachers and teachers' aides than firing teachers and teachers' aides. That's their record. That's their record, and they were in government, and there's members over there that sit there and they chirp from their seat because they know we're right when we point out what they did to the schools, what they did to the hospitals, and now they laugh. They don't have a problem firing teachers, doctors, and nurses. Listen to them. That's them. They're laughing at it. We hire them. Is there more work to do? You betcha. And you know the difference is we're willing to do the work. We didn't lose sight. We want to work. We want to do the work of the people. Those guys want to sit back, rest on, oh, look at what we did. Well, you didn't do much but close the schools, close the hospitals, and run people out of the province. So I'm getting a signal here. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to prattle on. And I usually forget to do this, but I'm not going to do this. And I'm going to thank my wife one more time. Thank you, Marjorie, for, if you're watching, for putting up with this. And I want to say for sure I'm not going to support that amendment, and I am going to support the throne speech.